I think I'm the last named speaker for our evening tonight. My name's David Sherwin. I'm the pastor of the church here, the minister of the church that we're sitting in, and a member of the Planet Youth Steering Committee. And it's my Planet Youth Lanark County Steering Committee, and it's my job to just say a little bit about the work of the steering committee and how that fits into this whole project. But before I do, I just want to share with you something that I've been reflecting on through this whole last hour or so while we've listened to so many wonderful speakers. One of my favorite university teachers used to say that we belong to something before we ever are anything. And I think by that he meant he was a professor of English literature, a literary professor, so he's talking about literature and culture. But he meant it much more broadly. He meant that when we are born into a pre-existing community. When we're born into a family and a community and a culture and a country, and all of those things shape who we are. So that if that thing that we are born into, that culture that we are born into, changes over time, then we change. Then the ones who follow after us change. When I was in high school, it was very common for the cool kids in high school, some of the young men anyways, to get together on Friday afternoon. 3 or 4 would jump in a car. They'd drive down to the beer store, known as Brewers Retail back in those days, and they would buy a 24 beer. And then they would drive until it was gone. That was called a road trip, and it was a standard practice when I was in high school. I have children now that are young adults, and when they were going through the high school stage of life, they used to go out with their friends, and they'd go to parties where alcohol was being served. And in their culture, one generation later, if they didn't have a designated driver, they wouldn't go. There was absolutely no way that they would get into a car with anybody who had been drinking alcohol at all or was high. A complete change in the culture. They would call their parents and ask them to come and pick them up. Can you imagine that? Rather than get in a car with somebody who had been drinking. We are born into something before we are anything. My children are something quite different than me because they were born into a culture that had been shaped for a generation by a community and a culture that said, we do not want drunk or high teenagers behind the wheels of cars. We can do it. We can change the thing that we are born into. We can change the culture. We can intentionally change our communities. And that's what Planet Youth is all about, is about changing the things that we need to change in order to keep our young people safe and healthy, and so that they can have the kind of happy, wholesome life that Dr. Lee was talking about at the beginning of our time together. The Planet Youth Steering Committee is a group of volunteers drawn from a variety of different parts of the community. Everybody works as a volunteer. So we've heard, I think, 4 or 5 members of the steering committee speak here tonight. Been working away at this. The committee was formed in 2018. I've been on it since 2019. It's been my pleasure to be part of the community, and it was formed in order to promote this process. This strategy for engaging with young people using data that comes from the surveys that are gathered up every couple of years. An iterative process. The more we do it, the longer we stay at it, the better the results will be. The steering committee is the point of contact with the school boards because you need to be able to get permission from the school boards in order for the school boards to administer the surveys. And only by doing those surveys in school, on school time, will you get 70% of the students, which is what we got in the survey we did on February. 70% of the grade 10 students in both the public and the Catholic school boards here filled out the surveys because the surveys were administered in the school context on school time. The Planet Youth Steering Committee is also a point of contact for the community in a number of ways. The first is it's a point of contact for the data that comes from the surveys that are administered. So that's what tonight has been all about. And all of the data that you've seen up on the screen here tonight is available on our Planet Youth Lanark County website. You can look at it, you can download it, it's all there. We are a point of contact and interface between the community and the schools. The schools get their own reports. They have their own work to do in the school context. But of course, that's influenced as Andrew said, that's influenced and interacts with the wider community. So we're a point of contact for that. We're a point of contact between the community and the research that's being done. And Tanya's work, Dr. Halsal's work with young people and in doing the research to understand more fully and more completely what the Planet Youth model might look like here in our own local context is a really good example of the kind of research that can be done and that the steering committee can facilitate. And we're also a point of contact for exactly the thing that you just heard, eloquently spoken by Brian, and I'm not going to repeat it, which is a contact between people who wish to champion this process in the community, people who are fired up, who think that this is really something that can make a difference in the lives of our young people. Someone who says, I want to take part in that. I'll bring that to my friends. I'll bring that to my community. Those community champions that we're hoping will come forward. Because without people to champion the process in their own intimate communities, within their families, in their neighborhoods, and in their own local communities, none of this data is going to get us anywhere. It needs to be studied, it needs to be thought through, and then we need to figure out how we address the risk factors that put our young people at risk and the protective factors that keep them safe, and how we improve the protective factors and decrease the risk factors. And that's going to require champions. So the challenge that I think we have for you tonight, and then I'm done, is to say we're going to invite you, and I think, David, this is in your survey, we're going to invite you to talk to at least 2 people who aren't here tonight, who you think might be interested in the work that Planet Youth Lanark County is initiating, to talk to at least 2 people, and to also consider whether they or you might be willing to be a champion and be in touch with us about how we go further. Thanks.
I don't know if you noticed,